Welcome to Real Voices of Happy Valley. In this episode, Dave chats with Todd of Drum Machine about different drumming styles, the importance of community drum groups, and how he got to be behind the kit with the EMF. Just as a side note, when we lived on Dodnays, Aid was just one of 3 drummers in 3 different houses that lived along there. Very tolerant neighbours.
Hi, sitting in our kitchen on a miserable-looking afternoon with Aid Todd, percussionist of the valley. Oh, Aid.
I'll be called many things.
Yes.
That's one of the nicer, yeah, sure.
Drummer with EMF, the main man in Drum Machine. Do you want to tell us about Drum Machine first?
Yeah, sure. So Drum Machine, in essence, is a collective of about 100 drummers. It was born from an idea that I had many years ago. So I've been playing drums since I was about 5 years old. I'm 54 now. Mm-hmm. And about 20 years ago-ish, something like that, somebody invited me to a big workshop being run by this Brazilian genius called Giba Conclaves, who had a global samba reggae project called Batalar. Mm. And I went and did a workshop with him. And it was after a bit of a hard time. My brother had just passed away and I was struggling a little bit. And my girlfriend at the time was trying to push me out the door to go and do something. Samba at that time was not something I didn't really consider my thing. I thought it was more Rio and all bells and shakers and tassels and all the rest of it.
And there's a lot of samba bands about at the time.
And there's a lot, I mean, there still is. Samba is in every village, every community. And samba itself, we could do a whole session on what samba is, you know. There's a really lovely book called Samba, and in the opening page, this guy trying to work out what the essence of samba is, he asks an old woman, an old, like, you know, leathery looking, like been in the sun her whole life, what is samba? You know, and she says, samba is the blood that runs through the veins of Brazil, is what she says. So it's a culture, it's a whole, it's underpinned, it's the undercurrent of everything in Brazil. And each different area, like dialect, has its own version of samba. So, like, if you go to Rio, it's all lots of different kind of types of instruments. Whereas if you get up into the northeast of Brazil, which is where this guy who I work with came from, up in Bahia, which was the main slave port. So it's 99% black community up there. It's really rootsy and really earthy. And that's where they play samba reggae. So they had their own very grounded, like almost like techno already, kind of quite tribal samba, because it was more African influenced before it had kind of got diluted by the kind of the Portuguese and the Europeans as it got further into Brazil. And then they got the influence of Bob Marley, literally, and the reggae movement coming from Jamaica and the uprising of black communities and all the rest of it. And so samba reggae was born. And you can hear, when you listen to samba reggae played well, you can hear the reggae influence of the skank, the offbeat skank. Anyway, I worked with him for a long time, and over the years, I kind of thought, you know, I really love the fact that there's this form of music where you can never have played a drum in your life before, pick a drum up, be given something quite simple to play, and have 20 or 30 people that all have a similar thing to do. And all of a sudden you count 4 and you have this thing that locks together. Yeah. As opposed to a drum kit, where if you sit down behind a drum kit, it's a big learning curve before you can pull out a groove. You know, I can have somebody give me a room of 20 people that never played drums before, and they'll be grooving in an hour. You know, I really love that kind of directness about community drumming. Mm-hmm. But it was all Brazilian. Batalar was all Brazilian grooves, and coming from a Brazilian perspective, you know, which is a different feel. Whereas I didn't, you know, Axé is like their pop music, if you like. Mm-hmm. I didn't grow up listening to that. You know, I grew up, I was into rock music as a younger musician. But by the time I was 19 or 20, I was into acid house and you know, and then breakbeat and then drum and bass, and then, you know, going back over Talking Heads and Joy Division as I tracked back on that kind of line of music. And I realized all of a sudden that the drum patterns we were playing didn't reflect the culture of the people that were playing them. And what you get quite a lot with samba bands in the UK is all of a sudden they love the drumming so much. They want to adopt the whole culture. So all of a sudden they'll be drinking like, really horrible Brazilian 2% lager, whatever it's called. There's a particular brand that they used to drink it all the time. They're like, we'd have these big rehearsals and there'd be after party and it would be all that beer. They'd be eating feijoada, which is like a Brazilian hot pot, and they'd be listening to Ashe. And I just thought, why are we hijacking the whole culture? Can we not just use, tip our hats to say thank you for the drums and the idea, but influence our own culture? So that's where I wanted to, do more drum and bass type grooves. I wanted to be following a bit more of that electronic dance music culture, hence the name. Drum Machine became, when I came up with the name, it was a light bulb moment, because it was obviously I wanted to emulate the rhythms that I'd been dancing to on the dance floors that were all done by drum machines in the early days of, and still now, but also the idea of a community band being the sum of the parts, like a machine.
And it's important to sort of reflect your own culture.
100%.
It's what somebody once asked me, what's world music? And I said, world music is folk music, but the folk are from different parts of the world.
Yes, exactly. And what's folk music? Hip hop is folk music, isn't
Absolutely.
it? And I think it's really, really important. And also to realise that not only to reflect your own culture, but that you must keep inventing your own culture. You must keep creating. So the idea that we're using Brazilian instruments, to me, is I quite like that, the fact that we've kind of integrated that, but that we're very much sticking to rhythms that have come from Western ideas and Western influences and Western music, and that's how Drum Machine was born. And we did I met my ex-partner now, Kaz. I met her and I tried to tell her the idea, and she couldn't quite get her head around it. And I said, I can only show you what it isn't going to be. It's not going to be a community samba band. So we'd only just moved up to Dodney's, in Hebden Bridge, and we looked through the thing at listings, and we found Sambalifax, or Sambalifax, however they say it, the samba band. Quite a lot of towns do that when they have a samba band. They kind of fuse the word samba with the name of their town, And so
it's a bit like festivals. You just put stock on.
Yeah, stock, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or like people they now try to manipulate the word Glastonbury, don't they?
Yes.
There's the McSherry family used to put on Glastonbury, and there's anyway. But that
there's even the Glaston stock.
Yeah, it's Stockenbury, and they'll be all these. So I went to see the band. We went to see the band, and I said, this is exactly what it won't be. I said a bunch of kind of not untrained, but not with any real professional person at the front with direction, instruments untuned, no real dynamic on the look, and trying to play Brazilian rhythms without any Brazilian blood, And I said, it's really more of a participatory thing than an observation thing. Personally, I'm not having any fun watching this band or listening to this band. I can see they're all having fun and I'm vibing off that, but actually we could create something that's a lot tighter, a lot stronger. So I am quite a hard leader. I am quite a hard teacher in the rehearsal room, but that's because we want the results that we get. And because we get the results we do, we are then able to get the gigs that we get, where we open main stages for Camp Festival, for Bearded Theory, for Beat Herder, although not this year, And it was born on. So when I tried to explain that to Kaz, she said, I still don't know what you mean, but I'll get some credit cards out and we'll buy the drums. So we did. That's what she did. Bless us. Just we got like $3,500 off. We didn't go for any funding. We bought our first lot of instruments, and we did our first open date at the Trades Club in Hebden Bridge with I can't remember her name now, the lady who did all the tree planting. She's now passed away.
Dongria Calm.
Dongria, that's right. Well done, Dongria, yes. And a few people turned up. Not many. We did a couple of sessions. We did our first rehearsal, and no one turned up to the first rehearsal over at Myden Road Community Centre. Next week, there were 3 people. The week after that, there were 12. And then it went on and on and on. And we've now been going 12 years. We're very much a band of the Valley. You know, I'm quite proud of it being very much a Hebden bridge, even though we don't rehearse in Hebden anymore, and we haven't for some time now. And we've had over 350 people in the band over the 12 years that we've been in the band.
I know. I mean, I've known quite a few of them, and they all seem to thoroughly enjoy it and get a lot out of it.
Yeah, I think people underestimate what they get out of it because, you know, when I was in Battlelaw, the band I did run, there were over 40 Battlelaws around the world now, and they all play the same rhythms, and they all get the drums from the same place, and they all look the same. And when things like Notting Hill, when they all come together, I started to realise, because when I joined Battlelaw, it was just about the drums. That's all I wanted to do was play, you know. And then I realised, actually, you know, there's this massive social interaction that happens. There's this bonding that happens that's beyond language, you know. And I kind of knew kind of deep down that would happen, but I'd kind of forgotten about it when I was setting up Drum Machine, because I was just very focused on people being at rehearsals and the band being serious about what they were doing and about people looking right and the rhythms being something that really reflected what I wanted it to reflect. And then you realise, like, when you do get to do a festival together, how much bonding happens, and people realise that, you know, lots of people have come through Drum Machine and said it saved their lives. Literally, their mental health was going down the toilet. Socially, they were lost, you know, and they found a family. They found it's not just about coming and drumming. It's about, you know, the friendships that are made, the bonds. We've had 3 marriages now. 3 marriages within Drum Machine, and one of them, the one that hasn't actually happened yet. Alex, he proposed to Sally in the ring after the gig at Beat Earner last year.
Oh, fantastic.
I know, yeah. I had to. I think she'd thought it was supposed to be a secret, but I think she'd found out in the end. But yeah, I arranged with the guys who run the ring, the Utah Saints lads, to pass me the microphone at the end. I gave him a nod, and he passed me the mic. And I was like, right, hold on, I need to get Alex out here. And then Sally was like, oh my God, what's happening? And he proposed, and everybody in the ring was crying. And I said, when he asked me to do it, I says, have you got a plan B if she says no? And he was like, not really. I said, you know what? I said, I think you're going to be all right now.
I always fear for the woman.
And I know, it's like, come on, you know what I mean?
I'll say yes now and then kill you tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. I'll kill you later. Yeah. But no, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
That's great. But you also, you know, back to the drum kit thing. You're currently drumming with the EMF.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's come through, you know, and that's amazing for me, because when I was a 19-year-old drummer and I was discovering, my musical journey, most people's musical journey is a line, is a direct line. Mine was definitely one line going in one way, and then I definitely jumped track and went across because I had an experience at a rave. So I was very much into like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi and that kind of rock, you know, maybe a little bit of cooler rock, maybe a bit of Deep Purple, a bit of Rainbow through my brother's influence. But I got very much into that kind of 2-dimensional music by numbers, kind of what I would call it ego.
They were the old days of this 20-minute drum solo.
Yeah, and all that. Well, I mean, not even that. I mean, I didn't mind that, Zeppelin and all that. So people that had some sort of, you know, like some sort of substance to what they were doing. Whereas Bon Jovi, it was more like just pop songs. They were pop songs. They were shiny pop songs, weren't they? And then I went to a rave. I got dragged to a rave, and it changed everything. And I literally jumped across, and I went from being a drummer to being a DJ. Sold my drums, bought some decks, moved to London, gave up playing in that band. That band I was in, Graffiti, they'd been to America 3 times. We played at the Marquee 20 odd times. They were doing really well. You know, they were a good band. And I just left literally overnight after the rave. And they were like, what? The band? And cut all the poodle hair off and went, and I started raving hard, you know, and getting right into electronic music. And as a result of that, that's when I heard that samba band, the Jiba Conclaves, that guy, that workshop I went to. When I saw what he was doing, to me, it was like live mixing, but with people and drums. So when I set up the Battlelaw band, there was a girl joined the band. Right, I did it for about 10 years. I set the Lancaster band up before I moved over this way. And right at the very end, there was a girl joined the band. Right at the very end, I kind of remembered her, but not too much. And anyway, years later, I'm playing for a band called Mr. Wilson Second Liners, which are a band from the Valley as well, which I still play for now. I do, there's 4 or 5 drummers that play for them. And I was doing a gig with them, and we were playing in Morecambe, and it was my daughter's 2nd birthday. I remember this. She's 11 now, so we're about 9 years. And we were on a break, and I went out to go and get some ice creams or something for the kids. And this girl approached me, and she was like, you don't remember me, do you? And I was like, kind of. She went, I was in your Batalar drumming band just as you were leaving. And I was like, all right, okay, great. She went, great band, by the way, Mr. Wilson, Second Line. And she goes, my husband thinks you should do Unbelievable by EMF. And I went, oh, what a great idea. I'll take that back to the band because they'll really like that idea. Nice one, nice to bump into you. And she went, oh, you only suggested that because he was the singer in the band. And I was a big EMF fan back in the day, and it was one of those crossover, Jesus Jones, Pop Will Eat Itself. They were the crossover bands that took me from rock to dance music. And I remember quite condescendingly saying to Rachel, who's one of my closest friends now, I don't think so, love, because that would mean that your husband was the singer for EMF. She was like, yeah, he's just over here. Do you want to come and say hello? So I was like, okay. So I went over and I met James. This is about 10 years ago now. And he just started his own solo project, the James Atkins solo project, of which he's got about 6 albums out now. He's the fastest and the most amazing songwriter on the planet, is James. And he asked me to come over for a jam. He'd done his first album and he wanted to take it out on the road as a 3-piece, him and Rachel, his wife, and me on the kit, and for me to help with some live arrangements. So it was funny because I drove over to his very nice house over in up by Settle. Yeah. And he as I pulled up in the car with my drum kit, as I was unloading the car, he very honestly said to me, he goes, you know what? Because I've just realised I've never actually heard you play drum kit, because I've seen you lead drum machine and play for Mr. Wilson's, but I don't know whether you can play kit. He said, so just to be safe, just get a bass drum and a snare drum and a hi-hat out just for now.
And we'll in case I have to tell you to get one.
Just in case I have to tell you to do one, so I got a thing out. We set a click track up and we started jamming, and he was like, right, let's go and get the rest of the kit out of the car. And there began the relationship about 10 years ago. I did, I think, maybe 3 albums with him. Then he wanted to go down more of a purely electronic with just him and his wife and more machines, and and he's had some amazing. His last album, James Atkins' last solo album, is absolutely phenomenal. And all throughout that time, EMF kept getting asked to do kind of reunion gigs, and they did the odd one here and there, And they had a guy called Jack playing drums for them, not the original drummer Mark. He'd long been he'd long left the band. And
they were just doing gigs,
but they were just doing
every now and again.
They would get asked to do a festival, and they would do a reunion gig. Anyway, they did a one at the 101 Club in London, and it went so well that it really blew Ian Dent, who's the main songwriter. Well, Ian and James are the writers, but James is they're both brilliant writers in their own right, and you can definitely hear the influence. You can definitely hear some of the songs. In fact, some songs are on James's solo album and on EMF, but different versions, So you can definitely hear James's influence in some of the songs. And some of the songs on the new album he's written himself. But Ian is a genius, an absolute genius, arranger, songwriter. He hears all, do you know what I mean? He has no interest in ego or like anything like his part or his bit. He is just about the end product, that's what he wants. And he's so lovely to work with. I wouldn't say for, even though you are working for. When you're in the room with Ian, he's very obviously the musical director. That's obvious. He commands that respect, and it's brilliant, and I love it. I love being in the room because I'll go, I've got this idea for this, and he'll go, all right, yeah, that's cool. I really like that. That's great. But could we just try it like this, or could we do that? Does that note really need to be there? And then he'll go, boom, that's the one. Great. So he allows you to have your input into it, but it's very much led by him. like a composer. You know, he's got the vision of what he wants the song to sound like, and it's great. And so they got to the point where, after the success of this gig they did at the 101 Club in London, and they were all really buzzing about it, they said, let's do a new album. So Jack, bless him, he was living all the way down in Portsmouth. He was managing a music shop. He just had his first child, and he was a very rock player, you know. And I think EMF required a bit of like funk and rock and, you know, sort of stuff that the kind of, you know, Ian, I think, lovingly and jokingly says, "Oh, hey, you've been the missing component for a year," you know, which is lovely for him to say. It is nice, yeah. And so James rang me up and he said that we're doing a new album. We'd like you to come and play some tracks on the album. Would you be up for that? I'm like, of course. Do you know what I mean? So I went down to a studio in near Bentham, near Settle. And we did a day pre-production at James's house, which is just around the corner from the studio. And then we went in the studio the next day and I played maybe 6 tracks and I think they used 4 of them. The rest of them were all programmed. And that was Go-Go Sapiens. We then did a full rendition of that at the Water Rats in London. And off the back of that, they asked me to join the band. Fantastic. And then we did a tour of Go-Go Sapiens. We then did a new album called The Beauty and the Chaos, where they brought in the old producer Ralph, somebody, I can't remember now, sorry, Ralph. Ralph, lovely man, that's what I'm going to call him, Mr. Lovely Man. He produced Schubert Dip, which was the one with Unbelievable and Children and all that on it. And he came back in and produced The Beauty and the Chaos. And that is, for me, that's the best piece of work I've been a part of. And I play on every track on that. And we've toured that. We toured that and we took that to Germany. And we've literally just come back from America. We just did 5 days.
Where did you do in America?
Well, we did the electronic music trail. We did Chicago, which is the home of house. We did Detroit, which to me is the home of techno. Sorry, Berlin, but I know you're a good contender. Yeah, you share the podium and all that. But Detroit, you know, with Jeff Mills and Juan Atkins and all that. And then we did New York, which is the home of disco and hip hop. We didn't really get to see much of that, the evidence of that, because it was quite a grueling tour. So we played the big Summerfest music festival in Milwaukee, which is near Detroit, on at the same time as Motley Crue on a different stage. And then we came back and we're off to play. It's the Cult, then Ocean Colour Scene, and then us in the other way. That's this Saturday at it's called now. Sorry, it's a festival in Dublin.
Oh, right.
That's this Saturday. And there's loads of other things in the pipeline. I shouldn't really mention South America, but I've been told not to, but I'm just too late. I've done it now.
Okay. Right. Well, I won't ask you any more about that. Yeah. Okay, that's been really interesting. Now, I know you've had lots of other things on the go.
Sure.
I remember one time you said the only thing that ever put you off the Beatles has been in the Beatles tribute band.
Oh, I was Paul McCartney in the top Beatles. I always say this. Was Paul McCartney in the second best Beatles tribute band in the country, but there is a pretty big drop off from the first to the second. So you've got the bootleg Beatles, which are amazing. They're amazing. And actually, there's a lot of really good tributes. So it's called the Cheetles, they were called, from Manchester. And when Kaz got pregnant with our daughter, I needed money. So this job came up as Paul McCartney. And I auditioned for that job and got that job. So I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I play bass, guitar and sing. I got that job. So I played drums for Limehouse Lizzy, which is a big touring Thin Lizzy tribute. I did that for 2 years. They were a hard-working band. They were out 3 nights a week. That was the band that put an end to me playing for Mr. Wilson's Second Liners, really, because I was doing that. Me and Howard had that divided. Howard's just done the Beth Gibbons tour, or is currently doing the Beth Gibbons tour, a singer from Portishead. So I'm now back playing with Mr. Wilson's occasionally. Did a gig last Saturday for them. You'd have to look them up if you've not heard of them. Mr. Wilson's Second Liners.
They've played a lot, haven't they? I mean, there's quite a few street festivals.
That's their main thing. They're a street band. They're a street band in essence, and the idea of it is that they're based on the New Orleans funeral bands, which you just have to look that up because it's too much to explain. And the idea is that Mr. Wilson's second liners, is that it's Tony Wilson's funeral band. That's the idea. So there's a lot of black and yellow, like stripes, like there was at the Hacienda, and it's all 90s house classics, all played on a bunch of instruments that are kind of based on a traditional New Orleans funeral band, marching band, you know. So I've done that. I'm currently writing a theatre production that will be a little bit like Stomp, that looks at the history of repetition and what we've done with it in the West, and what we've, 2 timelines, mainly the one that comes through Brazil, because obviously my drum machine are a combination of Brazilian instruments and Western rhythms. So my 2 timelines are Africa, Portuguese stealing the Africans, which is a bit rude of him, into Brazil, and how candomblé, which was their groove and their religion, how that became samba, and what they did with their instruments, and how that's quite celebratory. And then in the West, the drum in the West has unfortunately been mainly used for kind of empire building and war and marching and all that. So it's this show that kind of follows the 2 timelines and eventually joins in the middle with, you know, the coming together of Brazilian instruments and the 2 cultures coming together to give drum machines.
How far down the path are you with that?
Well, I'm 7 years in my head. You know, but this theatre show could be a cast of like up to 30 people. It could be like a Stomp type thing. We tour the theatre. So at the moment, it's very much still in its research and development stages.
You'll have to come back and talk to us about that.
Well, it's a bit more firmed up, for sure.
In the meantime, Todd, thank you very much. That's been really fascinating.
No worries. Nice one. Thanks for the invite.
Cheers, mate.
You're unbelievable.